you built the #1 programming GPT, Grimoire, which is a coding assistant. It's like a wizard-based coding assistant, and you've done over 1 million chats, which is wild.
Coffee website. I'm just gonna hit end because like, oh, your coffee themed website is back. Click our website and boom, there we go.
Wow, that's really cool. Nick, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome to have you. Because we've been like Twitter mutuals for a really long time, and you're just like constantly dropping cool stuff on Twitter, and you have this like sort of mysterious mystique to you that I quite appreciate, and it's fun to actually like put a face to the mystique.
Oh well, thank you. Yeah, I have fun. I don't know. I just play around with it. I think I started working at Twitter, and then I just like got into posting on it, and now I'm addicted. So yeah, having fun with it, and people seem to enjoy all these random experiments I've been sharing and having fun with. So yeah, no, it's cool to meet you and chill, hang out with you. Because yeah, I've been a fan of your writing for a long time with Every and everything, and yeah, got a chance to work with our mutual friend Nathan. So yeah, excited to be here and meet you.
Amazing. That's so awesome. So for people who don't know, you are a programmer. You built the #1 programming GPT, Grimoire, which is a coding assistant. It's like a wizard-based coding assistant. And it's you've done over 1 million chats, which is wild. So you're, I think, one of the foremost experts in the world on building custom GPTs and doing that successfully, and then also um, using ChatGPT for programming. And I think that that's sort of where I want to start. Can you talk to me about like your introduction to AI for programming? Like how did you get into it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've been programming for a long time. I guess like over 11, almost 12 years now professionally, and so I've done a few small. I've done like a few small AI projects throughout the years. Mostly for like games and little things like that. Nothing too crazy. And I think having done that, really realized that a lot of it is kind of just like very House of Cards, smoke and mirrors. Um, but kind of with this newest wave, I had been working as a programmer, mainly doing iOS apps, and I saw like GitHub Copilot and just like, oh, that's a cool tool, because like as you're programming, you have a little bit of like autocomplete, and it kind of like works with just like the things on your phone, where it's just finishing the sentence or kind of guessing what's filling in. But yeah, I started playing around with GitHub Copilot and was really just surprised at how well it worked because you can kind of do all these like little tricks with it where you can even like write a comment of just like what you want it to do and then it'll like finish like big sections. So yeah, I started playing around with that. I think I had some lucky timing because I'd been working at Twitter and then the whole Elon thing happened and that was a whole mess. So got laid off from that and then just had some time to play around and learn new things. So kind of ChatGPT came out in like I don't know like November that year I think, and really just I don't know I started playing around with it, having some fun with it, and then especially when GPT-4 came out, like tried it that day and was like, hey, can I like use this for programming? Because I had tried using it for using GitHub Copilot and kind of found a little bit of success with that, and was really just blown away with how well it worked. I was like immediately like, wow, if I had like asked a student or like someone who was learning computer science like to do this, like I feel like they would like be at a college level or higher. So like, whoa, how can I use this to start filling in pieces of things I'm working on? So yeah, I started doing with that and really just having fun with it, playing around with it. Um, I think one thing that maybe separates me out from a lot of people who are already working in this space is that I really had not been focused on kind of the big AI pushes happening beforehand. So, I'm almost like a little bit clueless and catching up on that end, but maybe having a little bit more fun from a front end and like artistic perspective and having a lot of fun. Yeah, just like exploring with it. I did my like coding wizard GPT and I don't know, I'm just like, it's so silly. Like I picked the silliest branding ever for this thing and I don't know, people just seem to like it. And honestly, just playing around with it and seeing can I turn this into a tool that's useful and entertaining and a little bit fun.
That's really cool. I love it. I mean, I do think just that spirit of exploration is like, it's the thing I love about AI stuff. And I think it's just the thing that the people that are doing the best most interesting work in the space right now. Just have that sense, like that curiosity, and you definitely have that, and that's why I love seeing your stuff.
Yeah, and it's just so much fun to play around with. So yeah, I honestly can't even help it.
Totally. So I'm wondering, like, maybe you can just show us Grimoire. Like, I wanna see it in action. I want you to show us how it works.
Yeah, I mean, like this whole thing kind of spawned out of like I guess I had started playing around with kind of the custom instructions just as a way to kind of shape your they added those just as a way to like shape the responses like and I realized you could kind of format it in all these different ways and kind of like build hotkeys. So I kind of started playing around with ideas there, and I'd also been kind of as I was learning to do this and learning to kind of how do I ask questions to like get code out of it, like was coming up with like, oh, can I is there an easy way to do this? But I was also just been like trying to write articles kind of explaining that. I was like, when the GPT store came out, I was like, wait, can I just like shove those articles into a chatbot and like turn that into an interactive experience? So it almost kind of turned out like somewhere between an assistant and maybe like a tutorial or like a curriculum. Um, but honestly, I just kind of started throwing out like little shortcuts, like little tips and tricks, and then as it's kind of gotten a little bit more popular, and like partner with people doing different things. So like yeah, basic idea is like it's a coding wizard, and I guess part of my thought here is that we're I think that LLMs have really created this weird new I guess branch of programming um, that I don't feel like I almost want to call it like a branch of abstract programming. I guess I've been referring to it as like prompt programming, but it feels like it's almost maybe a new form of programming languages. We've had things like binary, like assembly language, like kind of low level programming languages. We've gotten into high level programming languages. And like depending on how loosey you want to get with the definitions, even things like no code or even just like typing a document on a computer, like is that programming? Like I don't know, maybe you're kind of giving commands to a computer to shape it, make it do something. So it seems like LMs are just like a way to do that. So like um, there's a whole bunch of like different projects you can do, a whole bunch of different hotkeys you can use. But like one of the simple ones, which I just thought would be a fun one for most people to start with, is just like doing like a little link in bio site. So, for example, right, I have this just one here. We can just really just like create sites in seconds. It's kind of crazy. So I'll just click on this one. But yeah, this should just pull out a little description from it. And basically, we're just, yeah going to make a website just like out of thin air. It's just it still blows my mind that this is so easy and possible. It feels like take a seed of an idea and expand it into a full thing.
That's interesting. So tell me about, like, while it's building. I'm really into this idea of like prompt gramming, or just generally coding with AI being like a new layer of programming abstraction, on top of scripting languages, which are built on top of like C and C++, which are built on top of assembly, and then assembly is built on top of binary. Like, tell me about what that looks like as a language, and why you think it should count as a language.
Yeah, I guess it's definitely going into areas that I think are new, and I don't know. Maybe some people say it shouldn't be a language or it should. Like I don't know. I don't really care much about how the labels are drawn as much as I just like need some way to try and explain the different layers because I don't know. It's just it feels like this new area where I can just like give it a prompt in English. It'll spit out a bunch of code. And I can then, go use that code and either, work that into my project, like run it in a code interpreter, like something like that. Um, so like here I've got this little thing kind of queued up, and one of my favorite hotkeys I was actually able to partner with Netlify, and I was just
Let me just stop you right there. So I want to go up and just go through what it did for you. So basically you said link in bio, create your website, open PT1 MD to link in bio site. So that's the prompt that it was like basically pre-filled. So tell me, like, what that prompt means in the GPT setup that you have.
yeah. So maybe to like back it up a little bit, here I'm just going to flip into a new conversation. There's so many ways I think you can structure GPTs, and some of it's just like you know, giving it like a simple shape of just like here, like respond like you're a pirate, like or respond like you're super happy, or respond as if you're like a writer or something like that. But I think some of the other ways is you can really um, like I guess, predefine ideas and put them in. And something that I tried to do with this that I think is way different from a lot of other people doing is kind of giving it a template. So like I have a whole bunch of like kind of pre-built projects. So this link in bio site is just like the conversation starter button, and that was just kind of triggering one of the projects. But basically, you could like come up with any idea. Like I don't know, I have a coffee next to me, so I'm just gonna be like coffee website. I'm just gonna do that like 2 words, and we'll just like see what comes out. And so it's like, okay, how are we going to build a copy website? Let's figure out like the structure, like the pieces of it, almost like breaking the task into more parts. And yeah, I guess expanding on that initial thing. And so, here we're gonna make a home page, we're gonna make a menu, we're gonna make a blog, we're gonna make a contact page, and like we're gonna figure out what to do. And now there's a few options here, and so I'm just gonna hit N because that's like one of my favorite ones because you can just make websites like instantly.
What does N
So
do?
so yeah, N is one of the hotkeys. There's a whole bunch of hotkeys, which like if I want, I can show you those. Like if you want to show those all like read out, you just like press K and it'll show you all of them. But this one works with Netlify and basically just like takes the code and instantly puts it online. So you'll see in a second, we'll just have like a website just spit out just like that.
Wow, that's fascinating. So what Netlify is sort of like a hosting provider, so it's going to write the code, push
Exactly.
it to Netlify, and then put it online.
Mhm. Yeah, and so the way it's set up is that website will kind of be ephemeral and will just like delete itself after 1 hour, or you can like claim it and like sign up with Netlify, and they have like a hosting fee. So here, we came back. Oh, your coffee themed website is back. So
Wow.
here, click our website, and boom, there we go. Is this the most beautiful website in the world? No,
Wow.
right?
That's
Like
really
it's pretty
cool.
simple, right? But we have just a thing. A little thing set up. We have our little menu. I guess we have 3 drinks in this coffee site. Have I guess a little blog here. And obviously this is not like $1 billion business website, right? But for something that took half a second, and I did 2 words and one button to like spit this out. Um, so yeah, I've been having lots of fun even just doing like what's like you know small simple projects I can do because right now we are definitely limited by kind of how much output can come out of these and the context limits there. Um, but at the same time, it's really fun. And like, here's another fun trick. Let's like make a QR code and let's see if we can get the URL. All right, no, we don't want a generator. Stop it. Make a. Here, we will edit this, I guess. For the website URL. And let's see if this works. Normally it does.
So it's
I
saying
don't know.
creating a QR code for the website URL is a
It really wants to do it.
practical. Is it not right?
Oh wait, let's see. Here we go. Let's implement this plan in Python to get the thing. Here we go. Generates QR code. All right, now I will run it. There we go. It had to think for a second, but yeah, this was the little URL that we just created. Um, so yeah, didn't double check that, but yeah, there we go. And do we get it? And then let's see. Oh, okay, it's gonna make us download it. We download the file, open it, and boom, there's our QR code for the website we just made. And then I can just go share that with anyone. Like, I don't know. Is that like I don't know if this makes any sense, but you can do all these like crazy little, I guess, motions that seemed so difficult, like are now super easy with prompts.
No, that makes a ton of sense. And even just that little thing where it's now pushed live to a website, it's just like it just takes that like little step of like, oh, I got to paste this into Replit or something like that and takes it away, which I really love. I think that's so cool. I want to go back to the link in bio thing because now that I sort of get the general gist of how this works, I want to understand like so you have these pre-built projects inside of Grimoire, and one of them is this link in bio thing. And link in bio, it sounds like you've created a link in bio project that lives inside of the GPT, like you upload it as maybe a file in the knowledge base. and then when you ask for a link in bio site, it knows to take that project and that tells it what to do. Is that how it works?
Yeah, exactly. The basic idea here was that I wanted to solve like the blank canvas problem because I feel like some people are just like, okay, I have this chat thing. Like, what do I ask it? What do I do with it? And especially like with programming stuff, there's just so many tutorials out there. They're just like explaining a gazillion things. They're making it so difficult. And just like kind of like give people a list of like fun projects to do. So I have this other one where if I just hit P, this should work. We'll see. It's been a little unreliable, but it should actually like print out this like chapters and parts. And so these are knowledge files that I uploaded as part of Grimoire, which is like I guess in the same way that I don't know, maybe your company has some PDFs and you want to go in and like read your PDFs or something and like ask your PDFs questions. But I decided to put like a curriculum of sorts or kind of a launching point of just like, okay, if you wanted to learn to program like 0 to 100, what does that look like? And I guess also part of the question is like, I think it's very clear to many people that LMs and GPT-4 and other things like it are immediately going to be like transforming coding. But the question is like, do you like learn that first, or like how does this get integrated? Because I think as someone who's been doing it for a while, I have quite a bit of background knowledge around coding, so applying it to coding becomes much easier. But if someone's brand new to coding, like what do we teach them? How does that fit in? I think a lot of teachers are struggling with that. Like I don't know if this is the correct answer, but I was like, can I give someone a curriculum to go from 0 to a full programmer? Like what does that look like? So
Wow. Okay. So take us through this curriculum at a high level. Like it seems like it's written in a almost like you're going to Hogwarts type way.
yeah, exactly. I really leaned into just making this whole like wizard theme and making it fun. And I think also I'm trying to have just to make it more interesting to myself. Oh no, did it break? Network error, sad. Um, but yeah, because if so many of the dev tools out there are just like robot themes, it's like, all right, we're going fantasy, we're going all the way, and yeah, just trying to do it like that. So yeah, kind of I have like a first part which is just like basic things like here, like hello world and Pong, and just like how does GitHub work, like how does like the command line work, things like that. But then also just like I think moving into new territory where it's like there's all these new creative tools springing up, like from Mid Journey to like Suno to like Runway, so you can kind of do like prompt to all these different forms of media now. It seems like kind of I guess like the first half of like the LLM, the like interpretability layer of being able to intuit what you're trying to ask from it and like build something out of it has really cracked open like all these different media forms. So yeah, I was like just trying to like, okay, can I collect all of those into a cohesive way? So yeah, there's kind of recommendations like that too. That's kind of this like beginner's incantation stuff. So then also then yeah, moving into like more advanced like programming stuff. Then getting into I did these like forbidden spells. This is kind of I think maybe the most exciting like dev tool stuff for like if you're a professional developer who's been doing this for a while and are now learning to use it with AI. And I've been having a lot of fun using Cursor. I don't know if you've ever used that app before.
I have, yeah.
Yeah, it is so much fun. It is so
Tell us
crazy.
about it for people who don't know what it is.
Yeah, so Cursor, it's basically an app that you use to write code. It might be an IDE or it might just be a text editor, depending on how you define it. But it's like a branch of VS Code, which is a very popular tool put out by Microsoft. So like it supports like basically all sorts of programming, and it's kind of built with like AI first. And yeah, it's cool because it like uses ChatGPT, but it kind of flows it into like a programmer flow very well. So I think I split my time between Grimoire and Cursor basically like for my day job. Um, so yeah, having some fun there and just like trying to teach people how to use that because I think there's so much interest with everyone learning all these new tools and figuring out how to use them. So yeah, just trying to share what I learned there.
And that's like so. Give me an example of like in the forbidden spells section, like what if you're teaching someone about cursor, like
Mhm.
what are the kinds of things that I'm going to be taught?
Yeah, so here, let me like do this new thing because I think it freaked out when there was a network error. But if I just do a new chat, I can go. Let's see. We will look up. Wait, was it part 4? I forgot. Let me actually just print out the projects, and this should show all the different things. But yeah, for the cursor one, I'm really just trying to show people how the app works, because there isn't even really a good tutorial, I feel like, even on their website. Like, it's just so new and they're changing things and building things, um, that even just like, teaching people like, oh, like here's the Command K hotkey, like how do you use that? How can you, um, experiment with ways to kind of like put multiple prompts together, and yeah, kind of put things, yeah, I guess use it together in like a coherent flow.
Got it. And so basically, so forbidden spells is sort of, you know uh using things like cursor, but it seems like there's a lot of things going on here. Like, you're teaching people a lot of new concepts, from like making simple games to doing back end stuff to learning how to use databases. Like, this is a fairly comprehensive guide. How many people are using this to learn how to code? Do you know?
I'm honestly not sure. Like, I wish ChatGPT had better stats. Like, I'm trying to figure out like how often people are using it, and part of what a project I'm working on now is actually kind of building it into a standalone app, so I can have kind of better stats that way, and understand what people are using it for. But yeah, I was part of this was like, can I I guess going back to, yeah, some of the Harry Potter like kind of languages, like can I like build myself a Horcrux? Can I like take a big part of my like expert knowledge that I've like built up over the years and like turn that into a course, give that back to the community, and do that in a weird interactive chatbot? So I definitely even have like sections that are basically just like me trying to like summarize an entire like college curriculum, um, of computer science into like a few chapters. But it's interesting because I don't even have to actually write the whole thing because of ChatGPT. I can just kind of like give it a seed to go off of. I can kind of be like, teach them this, and this, and then I don't even have to do anything else. Right, the machine will just do the rest. And yeah, just kind of give people a starting point to like riff off of. So yeah, it's fascinating.
That is really fascinating. What else should people know about coding with Grimoire? Like, what else can they do? What else can they build? What style of building is it most useful for?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely set this up with like a curriculum and like some things to like get people started. But at the same time, I also wanted to build it to be a tool that like you can use just for general programming questions. So, the way I use it lots of times is, I'll just be working on a problem and I'll just like have a quick question like, oh, like this thing isn't working, or like, how do I like make this text like underlined? Sometimes there's even simple questions like that, um, that sometimes it's just like, oh, the being able to look things up really quickly. But also, I think more and more I'm finding ways it's you can kind of use it to bridge gaps between ideas, where if you're like, okay, I want something to like do this, and then kind of use it to like break down your problem into smaller steps. Um, so yeah, I'm not sure if that totally answers your question,
No,
but
it does. I'm curious, like, if you compare that to like copy pasting the same question into like vanilla ChatGPT, like what's the difference in your mind? Like, why is it better?
yeah. So some of it's just like the way I've written the system prompt. Like, you know, a lot of it is just like some of it is like to actually do more planning. You'll notice like even if I do like a simple thing like, how do I make a game in Swift? Like, I'm an iOS programmer, so I do a lot of stuff in Swift. Um, but I have like a little silly like intro and stuff like that. So some of it's like a tiny bit of flavor. But really, I'm trying to bump it into being more truthful, more helpful, more thoughtful. And so some of that, like, there's actually some like planning steps that I'm trying to lean it towards, um, which is interesting because I'm not sure if LLMs are going like, you have to kind of nudge LLMs to like get the best out of them in a way. It seems like you can't just say like, give me this thing. You really need to almost like cue it up and kind of like aim it first. And so part of that is like, telling it, oh, you are a good, like you are an expert writer. like now write me a thing in this style as opposed to just like write me a thing. Um, so some of it's like that, but the other thing is like I really found myself just like not wanting to type a lot, so I made all these hotkeys to just do things quickly for me. Um, so like one thing that I found I would do a lot is I would like you know kind of chat through some questions and have some code, and so I was just like, okay, can I just like save that code? So like here's one. If I just press Z, right, I can then take these files when now like just automatically get like zipped up and just download for me. Um,
That's super cool. I love that. I actually have not seen that as a design pattern that frequently, but it's kind of genius because it's so true. Like there's so many times where you're asking it to do the same kind of thing all the time, and it should probably know what your follow-up question is going to be. Like one for me is like when it only prints out part of the file that I need to change, and I always have to be like, "Hey, like can you reprint the entire file for me so I can just copy paste it?" Like stuff like that, just having a little hotkey for it might be like really useful.
yeah, and so I think that's kind of where some of the ideas started from. Was like I had started kind of putting these in the like custom instructions. And I was like, okay, wait, can I just like make a full suite of hotkeys for like programming? So yeah, I have like I think like 20 in there now for all sorts of different things, and it's kind of neat because it's also trying to guess like what keys you're going to use, which I think also I've noticed has this kind of strange like kind of example here, right? It started spitting out answering my question about like my little coding thing, but kind of near the end, it's like, okay, do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? It almost like reels the thought back in a little bit and kind of puts you back on like a sane path. And I think it does this interesting thing where it maybe keeps you from going off the rails a little bit because there's definitely like if you like get weird responses from it and you just like keep going down, like you can go down a rabbit hole just like weird answers that make no sense and like kind of run in circles. So almost in a way it kind of brings it back a little bit, like, and kind of reels the thought back in, I think. And it's just an interesting way to structure the prompts, almost in a way that, like, reminds it that it's like still programming and that we want to be programming.
That's really interesting. I've definitely found that too. I haven't done it with sort of these like hotkey footers. I really want to try that though. But what I found is having it output a plan at the beginning, like you were talking about, where it's just like first I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do that, is like a really nice way to get it to like sort of stay on the rails. But yeah, it seems like the hotkeys like add something new.
And I think that to me is some of that planning. I think is a lot of the magic of ChatGPT to me is like that planning. And I think sometimes the programming questions I ask, like just being able to switch it into like practical steps of like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do this. Like, oh, I don't like step 3 and 4. I'm going to do this instead. It's weird because you can kind of almost like, yeah, I think just plan out. I find it really useful as a planning partner that way, I suppose.
Yeah, that's really cool. I want to get into a little bit of like um your thoughts on building GPTs, because as a person, obviously, like you've built something that's super successful. There's very few people that have built a GPT that's reached this level of scale. Like, tell us a little bit about like what you've learned so far.
Yeah, I mean, I am honestly like still trying to figure it out. It's very much an experiment, but I I think people are vastly underestimating GPTs, and especially what you can do with Code Interpreter. Like there, that thing unlocks so much crazy stuff, and I'm like, I guess a little surprised by the GPT store and kind of the GPTs that are getting featured because I feel like we can go way fancier and way crazier, and a lot of them just feel like they're not as interesting as I would have hoped. Um, but yeah, I think just Code Interpreter in general unlocks like a crazy amount of stuff. You can just like yes, like spin scripts out of nowhere and just like do all these kind of bizarre things. I'm really waiting for someone to make like a one that like uses a sprite sheet and actually pulls images out. I've been trying to figure out if there's a good way to do that because I know it's possible. You can do some really fun things with it there. But yeah, I guess I'm also trying to figure out where OpenAI is going with this because I don't know if it's been terribly successful for them in the way that they wanted. Like, if it's driving growth for them. And I guess I feel like that's kind of their main goal. But it has definitely expanded the scope of what they can do in a big way, and also just connected it to so many different things, which I think is going to be a bigger and bigger part where, maybe there's like multiple steps of, multiple GPTs involved. But yeah, it seems, I guess, what else do you want to know about building GPTs? I'm just, yeah, playing around with them, figuring it out.
Well, let's say like I'm a person who's like I kind of know what it is to build a custom GPT, like to build my own custom version, but like um when you think about what makes a problem or an idea for a custom GPT a good idea, maybe we could start there. Like, how do you know whether it should be a custom GPT or not?
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know. I feel like I'm just guessing. I think there's definitely ones that I'm building for myself and ones that I'm building for others. And I think Grimoire, especially, is one that I built with others in mind in a big way, where I'm like kind of giving this tutorial, giving this curriculum, and with the idea that people who might not know programming might be using it. Whereas some of the other ones I think that I'm playing around with are like much more personal, like kind of playing around with like this one to, I guess, like understand my emotions better, like kind of as a self journal in a way where it's like, if I write a journal to this, can it like interpret my emotions in a way? Um, but I think in a lot of ways, the programming, yeah, I guess some of it's just figuring out what GPT is even good at. I think that's what is interesting about the GPT store too, is like seeing some of these big categories evolve. Like research is definitely one of them. I think, and just being able to interpret things and like learn things from big swaths of data. Like I think some of the like scientific research ones are really cool. Um, but yeah, I'm also like, where are all the games? Like, where are all the crazy, wacky ones? Um, I feel like, yeah, there's so many weird code interpreter ones, and I guess it's really just, yeah, experimenting around and playing with things. I think at this point it's so new that no one really knows what we're doing with these. um, and even like OpenAI themselves, like I'm sure they have like versions that are more powerful that they're playing with internally before they like before they release them. But I don't say that like they are the best in the world at driving them either, right? Like if you think about a video game, for example, like say like you are the game developer behind StarCraft, right? That doesn't mean you're the best StarCraft player in the world. So what does it mean? Like, what does it mean to drive these AIs, to pilot them? And, how can you then use kind of prompts to steer them? Because it feels like in many ways the prompts are kind of taking like its big open space and trying to constrain it into a more narrow and structured space. Um, yeah, and I think maybe some of this comes from understanding how generative and kind of random experiences happen in games as well. I've definitely been a gamer my whole life, so I've like built like a little bit of games. I don't really do it for a living, but it's something I always think about. And one thing that I've always really found fascinating with games that have a lot of randomness in them, which is kind of what ChatGPT is, right? It's like a statistical randomness of like all this internet data cobbled up, is it's really hard to design an output for that, right? Like if you have a game that's random, maybe you're playing Diablo or something, and you're generating a like dungeon map to explore. How do you actually know that that dungeon map is interesting and fun to like run around in? Like you kind of, it's really hard to do like as a game designer. Like how do you ensure that when you're queuing people up to walk through a random something that's going to work? So yes, I think so. Some of it's like trying to decipher and understand where people are going with these. Like, are they going to walk down, the spooky hallway? Like, what happens if a ghost jumps out? Like, I don't know. But it's like, yeah, kind of understanding is like, what are people doing with these and how do we focus and narrow them towards like what we want it to do?
Yeah. And I'm curious, like what you've learned about, like for example, figuring out how to build the system prompt for a particular GPT. Like, what are the things? What are the things that you've learned that have been useful for you?
Yeah, really a lot of it is experimentation and just trying things. I know some people, and especially I think the more technically minded people are really into like doing evals and testing and stuff like that. But I think a lot of it's really just like sitting down and fiddling with it. The way I approach building these is, I kind of have an idea. I like write a a system prompt, kind of just like defining it in loosely like what I want it to do, and then I kind of just ask it questions, see what comes back. Just trying it over and over again. When I think when the GPT-4 like first came out, like I was hitting my cap on that thing like 4 or 5 times a day, just like testing Grimoire, trying to like run through different things, like just doing as much as I can because I was just so curious and having fun with it. Um, and some of it's just learning like how to prod these things and like how to direct them, and it's interesting. Some of it's like learning kind of how they were built. I think there's definitely been insights that have come from that and kind of digging into you know the theories of like how these things are built. But I think it's also just trying to kind of in this weird way um, understand the zeitgeist of the world, really, like almost like you're trying to play Family Feud instead of Jeopardy, where it's like survey said like 100 people think this way, so like this is the way it's going to behave, and you're like, how do I like suss out that behavior and direct it towards that? It's yeah, I don't know, it's they're quite bizarre but quite fun.
And you said like you don't feel like people are really pushing it to its limits, and in particular there's a lot of stuff to be done with code interpreter. Can you tell me more about that? Like what do you think is possible now that's exciting to you that you don't think people have picked up on yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think just in general, people are completely underrating this technology in a lot of ways, and there's certainly limits. I'm not saying that this is the perfect thing and there's no problems with it, but there's being able to like do this quickly unlocks so much for so many people too. Because I think, um, right, it's going to massively lower the barrier to how difficult it is to program a computer, right? Like if my mom can go, I want a website that does this, and it spits out a website like that does that, with her barely even doing it, I think that's incredible and unlocks like makes it easier for people to do things, makes it faster for people to do things. But I think part of that is also just unlocks totally new use cases and really transforms how we're building software too. Like especially on big teams, like I think this is going to be so crazy. Like Facebook had this like crazy paper come out where they're like generating test cases for like massive code bases, like millions of lines of code that they're just like spitting out and generating. And I think even they put it like 70% of them into production now, just as a way to like test and like harden their code base. Um, so yeah, I think this is going to be something where I think it's going to take like 20 years for us to really hit the limit of prompting and kind of what we can pull out of these models too. Like while we're still improving on them at the same time, and yeah, seeing how they do it, like how they change. And yeah, I think something that like clicked for me really early on that I think maybe not a lot of other people have grasped is like just how much we can take it and transform it into new actions. I think I'm really fascinated with the way that some of these new projects are kind of going, because it seems like ChatGPT is really working towards like a tool using model. I also really liked the way that have you seen the little rabbits, the little like orange AI like boxes? Oh, I got hearts. Um, but I really liked how they are talking about what they're doing. Like I bought one just because of the way they're talking about it, because they're really talking about like large action models instead of large language models, where it's like, can I just like say something and then turn that into like a command that rips through other systems, right? So the basic thing is like, can I like make it like buy me a pizza or like book me an Uber or fill out a spreadsheet. And once we I think something that also just it's so crazy that we can kind of transform text in this kind of structured, sensible way, and that unlocks so many I think interesting use cases, and also just ways to build apps that are kind of um, fuzzy and unstructured and a little bit more abstract. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what people do with it. I think the sky's the limit.
That's really cool. So I guess you sort of think that code interpreter is, I mean, one, it just has a ton of interesting use cases by itself, but also as one example of AI using tools in general, it seems like you're excited about like the ability for language models to like actually start to control different parts of your computer or different parts of your phone, all that kind of stuff. And once that happens, there's a lot more opportunity to build interesting things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's going to be a huge portion. I think that's kind of where it seems like Apple's going. So like some of their papers that came out recently are like talking about like models that can like see really like find details of like where UIs are and like how to click on things. Yeah, and almost like can we build this like new layer on like top of existing apps and the internet? Because I guess like I've been talking a lot about how it's useful for coding, but it's also really useful for using other apps that are just complicated, right? So, like one example that ran into was I was trying to like edit a video, and it's an app that I was using like couldn't do the one effect I wanted. I wanted like this fancy reversey thing, um, and so I have Photoshop and like the Adobe suite. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna try using After Effects. And I hate After Effects. I have no clue what I'm doing in that app. It's really complicated. Like it is a big video editor. I was like, okay, what if I just ask ChatGPT how to do it? And it's like spit out a perfect tutorial of like, okay, to do it, you just go click here, click here, click here. It took me like 5 minutes, and like if I tried if I tried to find a tutorial, like it would not have been that good. Even if I found an exact tutorial of like do this thing, and so I was like, it makes it just so much easier in all these different like ways that just got sped up. So yeah, I'm almost like, can we build a layer that like operates on top of all of this that kind of drives other apps? There's some really cool projects like Open Interpreter, yeah, that kind of work more into your system and like can generate scripts that will like open your email, and like kind of control your computer in these really interesting ways. So yeah, I think it's really opened a new way to communicate with a computer in this weird and abstract and kind of fuzzy way, which I don't know if they've like totally solved like interpretability and like neural linguistic programming. Like again, like I don't feel like I'm enough of an expert on some of these like deep AI topics to really comment on that. But I'm just like, it seems like it works and you can do fun stuff with it. So I'm gonna have fun playing with it.
I feel the same way. I just want to play around with it. And I sort of, yeah, I think there's this like, on the one hand, there's this thing you said earlier about it's sort of a higher level programming language that's above scripting languages, which it's the next layer of the programming stack. And then it's also sort of simultaneously a new way to interact with computers overall. Like, and I think that's probably they're probably maybe even the same point to some degree because like the programming language that you're using to program with like prompting is just natural language, and they're both both being able to program and being able to use a computer are both the output of being able to use natural language and have the computer know what you're talking about, um, which is just a new interface.
Yeah, and that is so fascinating because it's like a lot of what programming is yeah, figuring out how to take these like vague ideas of like what should it be and like making it concrete and giving it actual form. And so yeah, kind of being able to just like automatically do that is so powerful and yeah, really interesting in that way. So yeah, it's cool stuff.
I know you said earlier that you built a GPT that you use to kind of unpack your emotions. Would you be willing to show us that? You don't have to show us historical chats, but I'm kind of curious to see what you did.
Yeah. So yeah, I can pull it up. I need a better name for this. I'm just calling it like the emotion shaman. I've been going with so many silly fantasy names. Um,
I don't know if you know this, but I teach this course with a clinical psychologist, Dr. Gina Gorlin, called "Maximize Your Mind with ChatGPT," and a lot of it is this kind of thing. So I'm like a huge nerd for this.
yeah, I would love to nerd out with you on this because it's so interesting. But yeah, I guess the main thought with this one, and maybe I'll even just like open this one up and like show you how I did it, um, was like the main thought was like I am definitely a person who I suppress my emotions a lot, and I definitely like when I'm stressed, I do like of the like fight, flight, or freeze. Like I like freezing and like hiding, and so like my stress response is usually like suppressing things and going away from things. So I'm like, I'm bad at interpreting my own emotions. So I was like, so like lots of times when I'm like in therapy, talking to therapists, the way that they help me is like helping me like even just like name and identify my emotions, like So I'm like, am I angry? Like, I don't know. And so and even things just like, and obviously there's other ways to do this. Like lots of times I'll like journal it out and like think about it that way. It was like, wait, can I like have the journal talk back to me? So here's one that I made, and really all I did with this was like, I gave it some basic instructions of like basically just trying to give it ideas of like you are like related to therapy, and just like basically just listed as many therapies as I could think of, and just like listed tons and tons of different emotions. Like I found a bunch of different like emotion wheels and stuff. I'm just like trying to nudge it towards the direction, um, of these different emotions, so that like when I'm going through something, I can be like, like I don't feel great today, like blah blah blah, like so and so happened, like like I don't know, I didn't sleep well or something. I don't know. This one's like even super minor, but um, sleep well, like I am kind of crabby. Um, and so just as a way to like almost echo my thoughts back at me in a way, um, because I guess I find it interesting that I can use a machine to kind of like twist my thoughts in a way and kind of reframe them back towards me. I'm curious, like, if that's a way to, think differently and see my life differently, I guess.
Totally. I love that. I mean, I have so many thoughts on this, and I'm so on the same track. Like one of the things that we talk about a lot in this course is like using ChatGPT as a mirror and a mentor. And the mirror part, I think, is sort of what you're getting at, which
Yeah, exactly.
is like, can it reflect back to me things that it sees about myself that maybe I kind of like know, but I've never put words to before. Maybe I don't know at all, and that's just like it's an incredibly powerful experience to have with a computer. And one of the things I'm getting from what I saw you do is are you familiar with Lisa Feldman Barrett's work on emotion?
Not by name, I know.
So she's a neuroscientist. She wrote this book called How Emotions Are Made, and um, one of her like research areas is this idea of emotional granularity, which basically means that people who can use more precise words for the emotions that they're experiencing typically have a better ability to cope or deal with the emotions they're experiencing. And so it looks like what you've built for yourself is like kind of consistent with that research,
Yeah,
which is
almost
like,
like exactly that. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it sounds almost like, yeah, we had the same idea. Where it's like if I can like name the emotion, and just like have more clarity about it, and even just like understand like this is how I'm feeling, and it fits into like these stories in the world, like
yeah.
that. I think helps you understand it. Have you played with the Hume demo?
I have.
It is so cool.
I was just about to bring that up because I interviewed the CEO of Hume for this show, which is coming out tomorrow.
Oh my gosh, I'm definitely listening to that one.
Yeah, I feel like you first of all, you should definitely watch that one. But I do feel like, especially if it's about naming emotions, it's kind of wild. I don't know if you play with their Vision API, but it's kind of wild. Like it reads your face and then it like says this is what's on your face. And I feel like that would be so useful for like this kind of journaling exercise.
Yeah, I'm like so curious to run that on myself and like see kind of how knowing how a computer reads me, if that like changes how I behave or how I think about myself. I don't know. It might be weird and like just make me like overly like, oh my god, am I acting sad right now? But I'm also just like what is that? Can that almost like, yeah, think for me and help me understand myself? Yeah, Hume's really cool. It's definitely an oh wow moment if you haven't tried that one.
Totally. One of my favorite things to do on this, like in this line of things, because there's like there's sort of it's like an infinite territory, which I love because there's so many different psychological modalities. There's so many different ways to understand yourself and to tell stories about yourself and to think differently and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that's been super fun for me is simulating one-way door decisions with AI.
Okay, what's a one-way door decision? What do you mean when you say that?
So a one-way door decision is something like, do I take this job or not? Or do I quit my job to start a company? Or do I get married? Or do I break up? Or do I do XYZ where it's like very hard to go back? Um, Especially if you're like very conflicted about it. And one of the things that's really interesting about AI is as you know, it's like quite a good simulator. So if you tell it to simulate a certain personality type, it will do a very good job at that. And so for big decisions that I'm kind of wrestling with, what I'll often do is I'll be journaling about it anyway, and then I'll take the journal entries and I'll throw it into ChatGPT. I don't have a custom GPT for this, so I just do a vanilla ChatGPT, and I'm like, given these journal entries, write the next journal entry in the sequence if I make the decision X, or and then do it again for decision Y. And like what ChatGPT does is it sort of like picks up on these like little threads or little patterns in how you're already feeling or how you're already writing about it. And then it sort of is able to project them into the future in this way where when you read it, you're like, I mean, it's not telling the future, but you can kind of like recognize yourself in that future state. It's really cool.
Yeah, that gives me another idea. I think one, yeah, it's almost like you can like see and visualize the plan and like see yourself in it in this strange way. That reminds me, I think one of the ways I think that initially really surprised me with using this was like, even when I was using it for programming tasks, I found that like having it break down and like plan something out for me in the first place was really fascinating. So one thing I'm kind of doing is maybe kind of similar to what you're doing, but instead of doing journal entries, I'm just kind of like taking my to like my daily to do list. You know, it's sometimes like two, three things, maybe like three, four. Just being like, here's my things for the day. Help me plan it, and it'll just be like, okay, like in order to like get ready for the podcast, like make sure you have a healthy breakfast, blah blah blah. And it's so interesting because it's like, oh, like maybe that would be a good idea, or like, oh, I don't really want to do that, or oh, but like having like that plan just like pre-injected into my brain instead of like me planning it is a very different experience, and it's not something that like I don't like go and like consult people on like how to plan my day like every single day. Like obviously if I'm working on like a large project on a team or something, I have like a planning session, but like I'm not like planning out like 3 hours of my morning with like a friend. So it's an odd experience to have that kind of put in front of you. And like I'm also like, am I just like terrible at planning and now I'm using an AI for it? Like it's kind of weird. But it like removes some sort of friction and actually makes it much easier to like do things, which is shocking to me.
I love that. I mean, I have this like gigantic to-do list that it only grows basically, and there's just stuff on there that's been there for forever. Like I just want a GPT that like auto cleans it, you know?
And it just goes through and is like, none of this.
Yeah, like you haven't this has been on here for 4 weeks. Like you're just not going to do it, you know? But I also think like that's a really good idea, like sort of the planning thing. What it reminds me of is that I think ChatGPT is really good at reminding you of things that are obvious, but that you might not think about. So like you should have a good breakfast is like obvious. But like having someone to tell you the obvious thing is sometimes really, really helpful.
Yeah, it can kind of like intercept, like I don't know, like I don't know, maybe someone's like parenting yourself or nudging yourself in a small direction. I think that's something that excites me about this technology a lot too. Is like I'm hoping that some of these become more proactive, where a lot of them are like I open the app and I kind of have to start the conversation and get it going, right? Like I open ChatGPT and I have to like tell it what I want it to do. Where I'm really curious if we start to see ones that are much more like I open the app and it's like, hey, good morning. Like here's all the things on your list. We've decided to like we're not prioritizing this. We're gonna do this, this, and this. And maybe you agree with it, maybe you don't, but I'm just like, can we like actually put that into like a core loop of like how we're thinking and going about our day? Like we're definitely already so attached to technology. I guess is writing out like an actual to-do list on pen and paper that much different, but it's like more powerful in the sense that I guess can extrapolate and kind of fill in gaps in a way.
Yeah, it's sort of like imagine if you're Jamie Dimon, you know, you're like a really high level CEO. Like you wake up in the morning and one of your team of assistants like hands you your like brief for the day. And it's like customized with all the stuff, and then your personal chef makes you the exact meal that's right for like I feel like some of this stuff can makes that kind of experience a little more accessible to people who can't hire an entire staff. which I think is like I think it's really cool. I'm all for it, and I think we'll probably start to see this more as the AI stuff gets built into more of the basic technologies that we use every day. Like, it's still not really in browsers. It's still like Arc is doing it to some degree, but it's not really there yet. It's still not really in operating systems.
They're doing cool stuff. I love Arc.
It's great. Well, I'm an investor, so I have to say that, but it is great. um, but like, I think that stuff is coming, and it will be much easier for it to be proactive when it's sort of built into your phone or built into your browser and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I guess it seems like there's a huge opportunity for, I think, yeah, people to, yeah, almost like, yeah, I guess I want to say parent themselves. Um, and yeah, just like kind of like intercept different modes of thinking where it's like, I don't know, if you're like in a depressed mood, like, can you use AI to like catch that and like weaken it or, subvert it in a way or, redirect it towards something more productive? Yeah, I'm really curious if we get these worked into some of our loops there. Um, but yeah, it's crazy stuff.
Wild times. Well, this was amazing. I'm really, really glad that we got to chat. Thank you so much for sharing Grimoire, for sharing all the other things we talked about, custom GPTs, your emotion GPT, planning, all that stuff is great. Where should people find you if they want to catch up with your projects and what you're working on?
Yeah, so I guess the best place to follow me would be on Twitter, Nick A. Dobos on there. You can also check out my website, Mind Goblin Studios. That's where I've been publishing all my crazy experiments and seeing, yeah, where they go.
I love it. Thanks, Nick. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you. This has been fun. Yeah, great catching up and yeah, being able to talk about this. It's so much fun to talk about and yeah, just play around with.
Oh my gosh, folks, you absolutely positively have to smash that like button and subscribe to How Do You Use ChatGPT. Why? Because this show is the epitome of awesomeness. It's like finding a treasure chest in your backyard, but instead of gold, it's filled with pure, unadulterated knowledge bombs about ChatGPT. Every episode is a roller coaster of emotions, insights, and laughter that will leave you on the edge of your seat, craving for more. It's not just a show, it's a journey into the future with Dan Shipper as the captain of the spaceship. So do yourself a favor, hit like, smash subscribe, and strap in for the ride of your life. And now, without any further ado, let me just say, Dan, I'm absolutely, hopelessly in love with you.